49ers too conservative, and who needs to break out in 2023 in order for this team to take that next step and go get them number 6? Quest for 6. I don't know if you heard, it's a thing. It's been a thing for like 15 years now. So that's what they're doing. Who needs to break out? We'll talk about it all next. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's Tuesday, which means I got my guy, So Real, Suneil, 2-button polo gang. What's up, man?
Top button gang, baby. You know me, Shanahan, like all the greats. All the way to the top button. Otherwise, you ain't part of the crew.
All the greats though is kind of where I draw the line there. But yeah, no, I like it. It's it's definitely it's a thing. It's a thing for sure.
My guy,
what's up, Ryan? What's up, Ashaka? How you doing? Black 59 Razor, one of the most underrated names in the game. 49ers throwback. Mike Crocker, CJ Gray on the goal. All right, let's do this, man. You're just got out of class and you're kind of last in class to the Last Second Sports Show, but it's okay. We'll forgive you. No. All right. There's been some things that have happened that I haven't really given opinions on, even on Twitter, just because I wanted to hold true and talk about them here with you. And, it's a little, it's a little old hat. I'm sure other people have talked about it, but I still think it's worth talking about because to me, it's leadership, and leadership is one of those things that I really dig. I really pour a lot of my life's effort into understanding psychology of leadership and how to be a better leader. And so you've got the whole Shanahan hanging out with his players in Cabo. Some people are making a big deal of it. Some people are saying, hey, it's no big deal, whatever. What is your stance on Coach in Cabo with the players? Do you have a thought either way? I mean, I'm sure it's like, hey, Kyle Shanahan's the best coach ever. He can do whatever he wants. He can do no wrong. I'm a Shanistan is what I'm expecting from you, but maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, dude, verbatim.
I summed it up. Is that a take? All right, you're perfect.
Yeah, look, I think that obviously I know it could go either way. Obviously, you like to see that there's some kind of camaraderie there. There is obviously a level of trust and fun that these guys have together, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think it's a new wave. Like, we're in a new generation, Jesse. When we were growing up, coaches and the players were like 40 years apart in age.
For sure.
What I mean? And so even if there was like a friendship there or a bond there, it was different. You didn't like doing the same things. You didn't. Coaches wanted to go hunting or, smoke cigars and all this kind of stuff. And the players wanted to go party in Mexico. Well, now the coaches and the players are like 5 years apart, 10 years apart, right? And they like doing the same type of stuff. So I think there's a little bit difference there. The thing that really stood out to me about it, though, Jesse, is there's this narrative at the end of the year, which, if Shanahan doesn't win the Super Bowl, all of a sudden, all the things that are bad with Shanahan start coming out. And one of the narratives that were created that I read a lot on Twitter was that the players don't like playing for Shanahan as much as people might think. And I think that seeing all of these players, like the core, the captains and all that, out there in Cabo with Shanahan, pretty much makes those people look foolish, right? To think that, Shanahan doesn't care about these players. These players don't like playing for Shanahan or don't trust Shanahan. I think that narrative is far from the truth. And to me, I think that's what I really took from it. Like, this culture is real. This brotherhood is real. Like, people genuinely like playing for this team. And, I don't know if you remember, if you read those statements by Emmanuel Sanders, who, was here for just a year with the 49ers. And he's like, man, that was like one of my best experiences in the NFL. And he's won Super Bowls with, the Broncos. And he was like, I wish I spent more time with the 49ers. I think it's just like really, really a great place to play, which I think is going to bode well moving forward when we're trying to retrain free agents and attract free agents here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a problem with it. I think that is kind of like old school leadership mentalities. Like there's no fraternizing once we leave this place. And I think that is probably something that even as I was going through my career early, that was always something that I was taught. And once I got into a leadership position, I mean, as long as you treat everybody fairly, you can also treat everybody differently. And I think everybody earns their role and their relationship through different avenues. Not everybody wants to also be chummy with the coach. You can invite everybody, but there's a lot of people that are gonna be like, "Nah, I'm good. I want to do whatever with my family or my friends. This is my time to play. I don't want to be with the guys throughout the off season." Everybody's a little bit different, and so I actually don't have an issue with it. I don't, as long as you're not like acting a fool and doing stupid stuff that's like gonna lose credibility with the team, which I highly doubt is the case, then live it up, man. Have fun, like unwind, show the team that you can be a human also. You don't have to be like Mr. Football Robot all the time. You have other things that are important to you. And I think showing that vulnerability as a leader is also very, very important. And that's one thing that I feel like for my career helped me go much further faster and get the best out of my people is I was a real person to them. And I was able to get in the weeds with them and show them exactly what it was that I was looking for and be there with them side by side. And some of that did mean, hey, you know what? We're hanging out together on a Friday night and you get to meet my wife and kids and I'm meeting your wife and kids. And those things are important to people. They don't want to just be a number. They want to know that they're important to you on a different level. And I think that is what today's generation is all about for the most part. Now, again, there are some people that would disagree with that still. And there are some people that don't want to be on that next level with their coach or mentor or boss or whatever. And that's totally cool too. But you got to meet people where they want to be met is the way that I see it. And so for those that want to be met, hang out in the off season, live it up with the coach a little bit, be with his family, have their families there, then I think there's nothing wrong with that by any means. So I actually don't have an issue with it.
And I don't know if things have come out like who was invited and all this kind of stuff. I mean, a lot of players after the season, go to Cabo and spend time, right? So this might not have been like a team trip. Everybody might have just decided to go to Cabo on their own, and they were just, hey, I'm going to be out there too. I'm going to be out there. Hey, we should kick it while we're out there. I don't know if this was like a Shanahan sponsored type retreat or whatever, or just like, because I mean, even
it's the Catalina wine mixer.
Yeah. boats and all, but I mean, we've seen Shanahan like this, right? Obviously, last offseason there was him throwing the football into the pizza oven and all that kind of stuff. Like that was with former players and stuff like that. So I think this is just Shanahan's personality. I don't even think this was like a team, like I said, a team sponsored thing. I think people go to Cabo a couple years ago, right? Because Shanahan wasn't in Cabo, he lost out on Matthew Stafford, right? The Rams, where McVay and Stafford were there at the same time. I think that this was just like people decided to go to Cabo at the same time versus the 49ers were like, hey, I'm just gonna pick, or Shanahan was like, I'm gonna pick and choose certain players to go out there with. I don't know if that was necessarily the case.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the details are either. 2.0 says these guys are adults, not kids. I don't think that there's a disrespect issue. They know it's business. If anything, I think it's beneficial. Yeah, and again, everybody has their different opinions. Harry has a different opinion. He says, I don't like it. I don't like that he's buddy and not professional. And I think there's different types of leadership skills and different types of leaders. And I don't think there's one right way or wrong way by any means. I think you can get the job done multiple ways. And so for me, I personally don't have an issue with it. I could see why you might have an issue with it. And I think it just comes down to how you prefer to lead and how you prefer to be led. I think both of those things come into play here, and possibly generation as well. I think all those things could play into account here. No doubt about it. So, but I have no issue with the Catalina wine mixer personally. That's just me. No issues there. All right, I did want to get into Greg Cosell's thoughts on Purdy and Lance, and he went pretty in depth here, and so I'm going to read a ton of quotes here. So stick with me; it might get a little boring, but I want to put everything out there because I don't think everybody saw the interview or has been given the full interview. At least from the shows that I've watched, everybody's kind of taking snippets, and so I want to sum it up and give most of what he said, and then we can talk it through here. But Greg Cosell on Brock Purdy, we'll talk about Purdy first, and then his snippet on Lance was much shorter. So he talked about Brock Purdy, and he says, after one game, I feel you on this one, Cosell, because I got the same thing. After one game, people on Twitter wanted me to apologize for my Purdy evaluation. 7 games is not enough to evaluate a player, good or bad. He said, Purdy is a good story. He did some things really well. He did, however, start to develop traits that you cannot have in the NFL, retreating backwards and missing predefined reads. He referred to a friend of his that he trusts quite a bit, and they watch film together. And his friend said, I am watching Purdy. The throws are there. He is not pulling the trigger. Kyle must be going nuts. And then he backed it up by saying he did a good job early of eliminating and isolating, but was not as good down the stretch. It is definitely counterintuitive, and I am not sure why that would be. So basically what he's saying here is, we'll take it up in 2 parts. So the Purdy section is, he played really well. He showed a lot of really good things. It's a great story. Down the stretch, for whatever reason, the quick decision-making and maybe pocket mobility and willing to stand in there to make throws started to subside a little bit, which is interesting to him. He would think that the more that you play, the more comfortable you get, but that didn't seem to be the case with Purdy. And so he's not saying it can't be fixed. He's just saying, I don't understand why that would be the case. And those are things ultimately that you cannot do in the NFL if you want to be successful long-term. So his thoughts on Brock Purdy, what are your thoughts overall on what he's saying here?
Yeah, I think that it's accurate. I mean, 7 games is it's not even a full season to really be able to define, what a player is. I mean, sometimes a full season isn't even enough, right? I think, you've always mentioned, and I think it's true. You got to give a quarterback 3 years to really know what you're getting out of a player. So 7 games. I think obviously you like what you're seeing out of those 7 games. So it's not
For
like,
sure.
There's something to build off of, but to anoint somebody, I think that, obviously there's fans that do believe that, but I think most people who are kind of reasonable people are understand that, okay, Brock Purdy you like having Brock Purdy on your team. Clearly there's something to build off of.
Right.
Is he a perfect quarterback? No. But who is,
For sure.
even Patrick Mahomes, you could find flaws in him, even though he might go down as the greatest. Right. So, yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I don't even think the way from what you read right now that he's even saying anything negative necessarily about Purdy. He's just saying, look, we just have to wait. He's not saying that he won't turn out to be a great quarterback. I don't think he knows either way, which who does at this point? Like,
yeah.
After 1 year of Mac Jones, everybody was like, oh my God, the 49ers missed. Like, they should have taken Mac Jones. And then year 2, Mac Jones, there's reports talking about that they might be like willing to trade Mac Jones, or they don't think there's much difference between Zappy and Jones. You know what I mean? Like, things change all the time. Like, so for me, I don't see anything wrong with what Cosell said. I think he's being honest and giving a great opinion about, just wait and see. Like, I think he's analyzing it fairly.
Yeah, and I think he's analyzing it fairly as well. And he's been saying, it's funny because, and maybe he's done it with more tact, or maybe that it's coming from somebody who's, I mean, I don't know, if you don't trust like what Cosell's saying and how much effort and work he puts in and knowing the game. I mean, you may not agree with him, but you got to respect his opinion. Cosell is legit, and so it's funny because I feel like Cosell is saying the same things that I've been saying, but I was labeled a hater for saying those things. Maybe that's because as a fan, you can't have an opinion that is
No. It's
not
just because
like
you're a
in line
hater.
with everything.
Well,
That's
Jesse, you
true.
are a hater, bro. Like,
Also because I'm a hater. But besides that I'm a hater, maybe it's those other things. I don't know. Now on Trey Lance, he had some interesting things to say as well. He said, my feelings, not necessarily. So these are his feelings, not necessarily that it shows up on film. Basically saying like there's not enough film to evaluate him really.
mm-hmm.
But he says, I need to know that he sees it quick enough. And then he came back and said, Lance has a bigger arm than Purdy and is more mobile. That doesn't make you the better quarterback necessarily. He may not be able to eliminate and isolate at the level that Purdy did early. And let's see. And we may not know at this moment. So basically, he's just saying like, we have no clue. We have zero clue on who Lance is. We don't have enough film. There's nothing that really shows up on film that's definitive. But I do got to see that he can, not that he can't go through his progressions, but that he can make decisions quickly. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. That's my biggest thing with Trey Lance is, people equate it to he can't go through his progressions, which is unequivocally just not true. You see it on film repeatedly. He goes through his progressions. You see the line on the helmet, you see it turn and go through, but he doesn't necessarily trust what he's seeing. And I think that's what I take away from what Cosell is saying is that, hey, I got to see it. And maybe he can and maybe he can't, but so far there's not enough to say that he can or can't. And we've got to see him do that, and probably have got to see him do it rather quickly because time is running out. And I think that is totally fair and accurate as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if we're trying to be intellectually honest, if 7 games isn't enough to really know about a quarterback, right. 4 games clearly isn't enough to know about a quarterback, right? So, yeah, I mean, I don't think Cosell's saying anything groundbreaking. I do want to touch on that last comment, the gentleman that said, nobody wants to give Trey Lance 3 years. And I think one thing is there's this negativity from the 49er faithful that always comes during the offseason. And I think it's because we just go off of these narratives without actually paying attention to actual facts, right? And the fact is, Trey Lance hasn't lost this job. He never once lost the job. Kyle Shanahan made a decision at the beginning of this year, Jesse. What was that decision as far as who his starting quarterback was?
Trey Lance.
He said it's Trey Lance. And he put his money where his mouth is. He had Jimmy Garoppolo not take any OTA snaps, no snaps in free agency. They were willing to trade Jimmy, and nobody wanted Jimmy. So they signed him because Jimmy was willing to take way less money, and it ended up working out well because Trey got injured. Right. And so if Trey was healthy, he would still be the starter. Now, in that injury, Jimmy got injured, and Brock Purdy ended up playing extremely well. Was undefeated with the team till the NFC Championship game. And even then, he didn't necessarily lose the game. His elbow ligament snapped. And so we don't know what could have come from that game. But this narrative that they're not giving Trey enough time, I think just doesn't make any sense because we don't know what the choice or the decision is. People are saying, hey, Purdy should be the starter because Purdy played really well in 7 games. So clearly, I don't know if anybody was expecting your third, Mr. Irrelevant to play the way that he played. So it's just now, okay, well, Purdy has earned an opportunity to fight for a starting position. It's not because they're out on Trey. It's not. Nobody said that. Nobody has even mentioned out of Shanahan, out of Lynch, that they're out on Trey. I think they still love Trey. I think that they want Trey to be the starter. But if you have somebody who's played as well as Brock Purdy did, it'd be foolish to not let him compete if he's healthy and can compete, right? You want that. You want to compete and have the best player win out. But I don't understand this whole they're not giving Trey enough opportunity, because when has Shanahan said I'm not going to give him the opportunity? Like, okay, we can argue, should he have played his rookie season? I think they wanted him to win out that job. I don't think he took that job away from Jimmy. And I know the people that were on the ground that were at training camp and at those games preseason, they said the same thing. Like, Trey didn't do enough to show that he's better than Jimmy. And 2 years from a Super Bowl, it's kind of tough to say, hey, this guy that has taken you to a Super Bowl, we're going to just bench him for a guy that hasn't shown us more than this guy to develop, So I just think that this narrative that they're not going to give Trey enough time, we don't know that it's true. And if it does end up that Purdy beats out Trey, I don't think anybody's going to argue with that decision, because at the end of the day, it's up to Trey to win a job. He has to take the bulls by the horn and show that he's that much better than the other quarterbacks on the roster, whether that's Jimmy, Purdy, or whoever else they bring in to compete for that starting job. I think I think there's this too soft on Trey to a certain extent. I think Trey is very competitive. He wants to win this job and earn this for himself. And so I just don't believe that the 49ers are out on him, or they've done anything to point to that direction that they're out on him either.
I think that there's this thought, and I have the same thought, so maybe I can try to clear things up a little bit, is that, and Will, by the way, I'm pretty positive that's Sersky, by the way, but he says that he's more meaning like the fans don't want to give 3 years. Like, they don't want to give him the time, which is true. I agree with that. But I want to go back a little bit, because JM says the same thing. He had time. They expected Lance to wow them over Jimmy right away. If that was your expectation, then that was the wrong pick, because Lance always needed that little extra time. He didn't play a lot in college, and then he missed a full year because of COVID. So, but even Jack, I just got done doing a show with him, and he brought it up. He's like, listen, he was clearly the better quarterback early in camp. Lance was over Jimmy. Grant said the same thing. I remember him talking about it. And then, he kind of tailed off a little bit and got the finger injury. But even if camp had ended and things were even, they weren't going to go with Lance. They were going to go with Jimmy, because things were even and they trust Jimmy, and that's who they know they can win games with Jimmy, and they weren't going to let Lance develop, because really they wanted Lance to be ready for this last year. Now, they held true to that. They gave the team to Lance. He got injured. But now you're in a situation where it's like, okay, so is it really going to be a competition where he can win this thing? Or is it more like it was in 2021 when he was drafted, where it's like, if he isn't just above and beyond way better, he doesn't have a shot. I mean, even if he's slightly better, that's not enough to override regular season and even playoff wins. So really, does he really have a shot? I think is where people are coming from. And if that is the case, then that to me is not, you're not giving it to the best man. You're giving it, we'll put it in MMA terms. He's going against the champion. He can't let it go to the judges' scorecards and win a unanimous decision. He's going to have to knock him out. And I don't know if that's necessarily really a competition, in my opinion, in letting the best man win. That's just like, he wasn't the best man, but he's proven more in the regular season. And so we're going to go with him. Like, that's the way that I feel like the situation is.
Yeah, but I just kind of feel like that's the way it should be.
Why though? Why should it be that way?
I personally think that this is what I think. And I'm a Trey guy, so this isn't coming from, I've always been, I always, and I want Trey to get an opportunity and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you want the ultimate goal is to put the player that's going to give you the best chance to win. And a proven commodity over a commodity that isn't there, it's always going to be harder for the non-proven commodity to take that position. If in any other realm of business, if there's somebody that you're seeing win, that does great and all that kind of stuff, the person that's coming up that's unproven has to do something amazing. Otherwise, you're just going off of potential, right? And going off of potential is good when you have maybe a guy that's like if Jimmy was still in competition, I think that Trey and Jimmy could tie and they'd give it to Trey because there's upside to that. And they know Jimmy is what Jimmy's going to be.
But they didn't do that in 2021. They were unwilling to do that.
But in 2021, I know you're saying they're at camp and all this kind of stuff, but also that was his rookie year, right? He hadn't played football and they felt like, and the locker room, I think, played a role because we now know that Jimmy, like Kyle Shanahan listens to his players. And look, that team went all the way to the NFC Championship game under that. Like, do you think that, Jesse, if they were completely out of the playoffs, that they wouldn't have started Trey Lance in all those games that that Jimmy wasn't there? Like, if they had no chance to make it to the playoffs, you don't think like 8 games into the season they would do it like most rookie transitions are, where they go from, a team that halfway through the season, they start kind of like what they did with Justin Fields and all these other players. I think they would have done that.
I do, but here's the problem that I have, Suneil. When you go and make the move that you make to go get Trey Lance, that's you without, you don't have to come out and say it. You're basically telling the world at that moment, we don't believe that we can win a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. Sure. So why, when you have a wide open window, is your best chance still Jimmy Garoppolo when you've already told the world that we can't win with this guy? We got to we're so desperate to replace this guy that we're going to go spend all of our future assets to do it, and then we're still going to play this guy. That doesn't make any sense to me. So now why would the locker room, who has clearly come out? It's not like it's a surprise, Suneil. It wasn't a surprise then. It's not a surprise now who they would prefer to play. Why would they do anything different than what they did in 2021? Even if Lance shows that he is, even if Lance is marginally better at this moment, we all know that the potential is sky high for Trey Lance. Like, if they both hit their top potential, I don't think there's anybody that disagrees that Lance would be the better player. So if
Absolutely.
Trey Lance is exponentially further from his potential, but he still, even then, can be as good or slightly better than Purdy in a competition, and we're still going to give it to Purdy, that's where I have the issue. And that tells me you never actually did give him a chance to develop. And somebody has to be to blame for that. Like, it doesn't mean, like, you hit on, if Purdy hits, that's great. We'll take that. That could be a win, and that might save you. But it was still either a wrong choice or a wrong development plan. One of the two has to be true. You don't get to just skirt away and be like, it's Lance's fault. That's not the way this works. It was either the wrong development plan or the wrong pick, and both of those fall back on the organization. That's what
you don't think anything has to be on the player itself?
If he got injured and wasn't able to act and showed through 2 training camps he was as good or better, and
so that's where I disagree. So one thing that I disagree with is I don't know if the move for Trey was because I think the move was more that they didn't believe Jimmy could stay healthy enough for this team.
I
to win.
Wholeheartedly disagree with that.
Sure. Well, now we're just going off of opinions, though,
right?
Because we don't know what the coaching staff actually felt. Obviously, by their choices that they made, they still believe that Jimmy gave them the best opportunity to win, right? So that's why they went with Jimmy over Trey. In the second year, Kyle Shanahan was secure about, hey, I want Trey to start. This is going to be my QB of the future. Get rid of Jimmy, right? And in the year starting at this year, he's become even more clear. Like, there's no chance Jimmy is on this team, right? So I think Shanahan has been very, very consistent as far as what he thought his plan was going to be. Now, I think the wrench in the plan is that Purdy turned out to be better than they expected. right? They signed Nate Sudfeld to a fully guaranteed contract, and they cut him because Purdy showed enough that he was better than Sudfeld, right? Then when Purdy got the opportunity, he played better than anybody expected. So I think that's more the wrench. So I don't know, Jesse. I'm saying if for some reason we're all assuming that if Trey and Purdy play similarly, that they're going to go with Purdy. To me, I think a part of that is on Trey, because if you're a first round draft pick and somebody's Mr. Irrelevant and he can compete with you to that point.
No. See, that's where I'm going to draw the line, because once you're on the team, all that other shit goes out the window. The best player just plays, whether you're the 5th round pick, the 1st round pick, like everything's even. It's not my fault that they drafted me in round 1. All I can do is come out and be the better player. So if I'm the better player, even if it's marginal, I should be the starter, and that should hold true for all positions.
I personally believe, from what I've seen from Shanahan, he will play the player that he thinks he could win with the most. I think that's been consistent as far as what has been. Now, people have had different opinions as far as who they felt like could be the best. Maybe people thought Trey Lance would be better, but in his mind, Jimmy was better, and he went with Jimmy. In the second year, like I said, he made it very forceful that it was going to be Trey. I think that it would be if Purdy didn't play the way Purdy played. There's no doubt in my mind that Trey Lance would be the starter. No questions asked. If Jimmy was here, whatever the case may be. Purdy just played really, really well. So there's a question mark. And look, Jesse, we don't even know what Kyle Shanahan's thinking.
No, we don't.
He's very, very clear. He's very, very much so the type of person that loves messing with everybody. He's not going to tell us because he doesn't need us to know. So in reality, we could be giving all of this feedback, and in his mind, he thinks it's Trey. And I that wouldn't surprise me one bit. At the end of the day, the one thing I can trust about Shanahan, he's going to play whoever he thinks is going to give him the best opportunity to win. If anybody wants to argue with me on that, I think you're being naive, because Kyle Shanahan has won a lot.
No, he definitely will.
Not you, but I'm just saying.
No, but I want to say he definitely will. But I don't know if he has a track record to actually say that he knows how to pick the right guy, because Brock Purdy was clearly better than Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, it wasn't even close when he entered the game. They were on completely different planets. And
but that might not have been week 1 or week 4, true. Jesse.
That's true.
He came in near the end of the year. That's what I'm saying. Like, these narratives can be built, but if we're not there,
Jimmy didn't get injured. But if Jimmy didn't get injured and Purdy was showing out in practice the way that everybody talks, the way that he was showing out, do you believe for a second that barring a Jimmy injury that he would have lost that job? Because I don't think he would have lost that job.
I don't think so either, because that's a very tough call to make when the guy's winning. Like, you can't bench somebody when they're going on this streak. You know what I mean? And it wasn't like Jimmy was playing terrible. Yeah, did it elevate when Purdy was there? Sure, but Jimmy was trending that way too with CMC, is what I'm trying to say. He wasn't not playing well, Jesse. We can't rewrite the narrative as well.
He was playing fine.
All that kind of stuff. And so, but do I think Purdy is better than Jimmy now? Absolutely. Like, he's shown that he is, but I don't know if you could have made that justification when Trey went down, and it was if Jimmy and Purdy were the option. Nobody knew that Purdy was as good as it is, and all the team mentioned that because he was on the scout team for so long, going against the defense that was playing so well, that probably elevated his growth that much more. So I just think, and I know it's not you, Jesse, but a lot of people are picking and choosing their narratives that they're saying based off of assumptions. I personally, my money would be Trey Lance is starting quarterback week 1, and it's his job to lose. Not only because of the injury, but I do believe that Trey Lance is going to step up and take the job. And I do think he needs to. At a certain point, he needs to win this job, not just for himself, but also for the fan base and the team around him to believe in him. And I think he's capable of it, and I think he will do it.
I do too, by the way. And I have no problem with an open competition. I don't think he should be given the job at this point. He said it. I agree with everything. I'm just going off the track record of what we've seen. We both agree that Jimmy would not have been benched for Purdy at any point unless he had gotten injured. Okay. So Why is that though? It's because going even back to 2021, practice doesn't override winning games when it matters. Purdy has that in his bank account. He has that in his bank account. Trey Lance does not have that in his bank account. And unless he completely obliterates Purdy, if it's a 60-40 situation, that to me is not going to be enough. And I think that's where, and again, you're right. This may be a moot point, but I'm going off of what I've seen and trying to make an educated guess on how Shanahan has handled these things in the past and saying that's what I believe is the path that we're headed down. And so if we are headed down that path and that does hold true, then a comment like Will made, I think is completely fair and actually is exactly the narrative because it's a true narrative.
Yeah, and I just think that this isn't the same situation. Jimmy and Purdy were two different situations. Jimmy was the guy that they paid a lot of money to. They were not paying him backup money. They were paying him starting money. He had 2 years removed from taking them to a Super Bowl. Like, I think that's different from Purdy coming in mid-season, playing really, really well, but not much invested. Like, he's not taking up a percentage of the cap. I think it's a fresh competition. And I think if all things are even, like I said, I just think he's going to play whoever wins out. I hope that Purdy comes back healthy. I hope that Trey doesn't make it close. Because to be honest, this is a make or break year for Trey. If he can't beat out Brock Purdy, to me, that's going to be tough on him to really sustain himself and have a long-term career as a starter in this league. And I think he knows that. And like I said, I think he has much more talent than Brock. I think he's the prototypical size and all that kind of stuff, which Brock doesn't have. Brock's intangibles are off the charts, but I think so is Trey. So he has everything in his realm to beat out Brock Purdy in training camp, and it shouldn't even be a question.
Yeah, and we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I just I think, like I said, based off of what I've seen happen, and I know that the situation is different and one is paid and all these other things, and maybe for Shanahan it is different. But I think for this team, they've already made it known that this is not different. The names are different, but their choice is exactly the same. And the choice is not Trey
Who are
Lance.
we defining as the team?
I mean, the most important pieces that came out publicly, the defensive player of the year, your all-pro tight end, your all-pro wide receiver. I mean, I think that they've got a pretty good pulse on what the voice is of the team, and then the unanimous or the anonymous player, George Kittle, that said it to Mayoko also.
Right.
So, you know,
but also we also got to say when these opinions were being said, right? It's right after they just had a remarkable run, all the emotions, all that kind of stuff. They were going into an NFC championship game where they felt like they were the better team and their quarterback got injured and they want to run it back, right? If Trey comes into, and Trey wasn't playing any football, they're not seeing him run, they're not seeing him play. In fact, it probably feels like years ago before they saw Trey Lance on the practice field with him throwing the ball or anything like that, right? Trey comes into training camp and starts oohing and awing these guys like he was at the beginning of training camp. I think that he could change all of their minds, right? But he needs to. And look, I'm not mad at that. Because I think it's going to make Trey a player. And I think that this team ultimately wants to win as well. And I think that if they see Trey is going to give them a better chance to win, they'll be for Trey as well. Like, it's not like Debo doesn't like Trey. It's not like Kittle doesn't like Trey. Right now, they just see what they see, right? Purdy did more than Trey has. That's just facts. Trey needs to start doing more. And I think that he will.
Yeah. I just don't think you can do more in practice. That's just my opinion. But we'll see. I mean, there's so much. Again, there's a lot of time. The ultimate decision comes down to Shanahan. We'll find out a lot more tomorrow with Purdy's surgery. I got to get to these super chats. Kid Carter says, "Hey, Jess, this is kind of what I was trying to say in my call-in last week. Great call, by the way. I worry Lance is good when he knows where the ball is going in the huddle, but not when he has to adjust on the fly. But why is it not good? And I think one is fixable and one is not. Like, you have Jimmy Garoppolo not good, where he's not good in that same scenario. But that's because Jimmy Garoppolo, at least from what I see, I genuinely don't think he reads the field well, especially when he has to turn his back to the defense, which is why they kind of stopped playing him in shotgun and doing play action. Trey Lance is a little bit different. He's comfortable turning his back to the defense. He's comfortable playing under center. You clearly see him go through his progressions. And by the way, if you just take his turnover-worthy plays, he doesn't make a lot of bad decisions. It's just he's got to trust what he's seeing. I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you. I just think one is fixable and one isn't. And then he follows up and says, ultimately, I think that's a bigger issue and takes longer time than Purdy's issues. Agree. Trey's are a lack of experience and knowledge, which takes a long time, whereas Purdy isn't about that as much. No, I agree. And I think, which is exactly why I made the video, Mr. Right versus Mr. Right Now. And because I agree with you wholeheartedly. Mike says Trey hasn't had a game opportunity, like Kyle said on the Rich Eisen show. That's the way that I took the comment. Okay. And I think that's fair. Hold on. Kid Carter comes back and says, don't think that they got Jimmy because they didn't believe he could win with him. Okay. He doesn't think they got rid of him because of the winning situation. I think it's mostly financial and hope that they could get better with their future. Yeah, maybe. I feel like if you mortgage the future like that you're saying like, I don't think I can win with this guy. That's just me. Maybe I read into that situation wrong. On the goal line says, I couldn't disagree more. It didn't seem like Kyle wanted Jimmy G to start 2021. It seemed like the locker room forced that. Yeah, maybe the finger injury as well. Twisted Clown says, Kyle thinking, you don't know football. Also true. 2.0 says, why is it that hard to believe that Trey just isn't good and they made a huge mistake drafting him? Well, that's what I'm saying, 2.0. So if that's the case, who made that mistake, though? You said they made the mistake. Trey Lance didn't make the mistake. So it's either they made a mistake or they don't know how to develop them. One way or another, that's on them. And so that's where I'm coming from. Also, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he's not good, but I think it's completely out of the realm of possibility that you can make that judgment off of 4 games. And I think anybody who feels like they've got it figured out, you don't got it figured out. 49ers Throwback says, I can argue with you on the Suneil. I'm joking. Yeah. He's very argumentative, that 49ers Throwback. No doubt about it. 2.0 says, is it possible that this team and Kyle Shanahan have seen Trey in practice every day and know that he isn't even close to Purdy or Jimmy? Well, then why would you start him in 2022? And why would you be willing to move on from Jimmy? And why wouldn't you have started Purdy? Wouldn't you do exactly what Kyle has done thus far if Trey isn't good? Actually, no, I wouldn't. I would have just not ever played him. If I didn't think he was ever going to be any good, I just would have never played him. And I would have done things a little bit differently. Mike Crocker's.
Yeah. Before just off that comment, Shanahan's never decided to not play Trey. Trey got injured. Like, I think people keep forgetting that it's not that he had the option to choose between Trey and Purdy. We haven't seen what that decision is. Everybody's just assuming what that decision is going to be. We haven't seen that decision. Year 1, I think it's natural. A lot of quarterback, the great Patrick Mahomes, sat a year behind Andy. Wait, who was it? The quarterback. I'm blanking right now. Alex Smith sat behind Alex Smith a year, and then they played him year 2. I think that's the same game plan that they had for Trey as well. And unfortunately, in year 2, Trey had a season-ending injury. So that's what I'm saying. I don't understand this narrative where people think that Shanahan's out on Trey. I don't think that's the case at all. I think week 1, he's going to be the starter, and they're going to give him ample opportunity to be the guy, because I do believe that they drafted him for that reason. We just haven't seen it.
Yeah, Mike says Trey played 2 limited games last year, limited weapons, monsoon with limited weapons, half a quarter with limited weapons, hardly a chance. He's only 22. Yeah, I mean, certainly I think we all agree there. Like he's played 1 game with Kittle and no games with CMC. And I think not everybody, but a lot of us want to see at least what that looks like. See if it looks different. 2.0 says I agree, not Trey's fault. It's the Niners' fault. And what's up, Aaron? 49ers first takes. Yelling. Props to my dude, Jessie Naylor, slaying it as usual. And I think the Niners need to address the trenches via the draft and free agency. Yes, 100%. Actually, just talked about that with Jack before this show. Okay, let's hammer these final topics out. So, because I actually got to do regular work after this. Nobody likes to do that at 11 o'clock at night, but things have got to get done around here. So 49ers, are they too conservative? And let me make sure that I clarify this question. You look at a team like the Eagles last year who clearly thought that they could win a championship. And they seem to go crazy in making trades and going after free agents and just bringing in everybody that they could. Now, the 49ers are always willing to make a move in the offseason. No doubt about it. They make moves. But then they let a lot of other people walk frequently. And it doesn't seem like they ever just like go get everybody to go all in. Do you think the 49ers are too conservative? Or do you think a move like CMC says, no way? This shows that they're not too conservative. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the moves that they have made. Trent Williams, all-pro, best player in the league at his position. CMC, all-pro, best player arguably at his position, or at least top 5 at his position. Charvarius Ward, probably top 10 at his position. So are they too conservative? I don't think so. I think that they know themselves. And here's the thing, like, there's a lot of these narratives around the Eagles. And if you could give me a couple minutes to speak on this.
Yeah.
I don't think us as a fan base do a good job at isolating what the actual issues are or what actually causes us to be good and causes us to be bad, and how to read that into other teams as well. The Eagles are not built the same way the 49ers are. Their ownership and their GM are much different than our owner and our GM. Howie Roseman is probably top 3, if not the best GM in the league. His ability to make trades, his ability to think in the future, his skill set of always being able to compile picks, being able to find certain talent and make certain moves is not Shanahan and Lynch's strength. Shanahan and Lynch's strength is drafting people, developing people, and putting people in the right position at the right time, getting everybody to play better than what other people think that they actually are. That's why the 49ers are constantly in the Super Bowl picture. Now, if you're trying to play the Eagles games, Eagles way of offseason with the skill set of what the 49ers have, it could be a disaster. Much like if the Eagles try to do what Shanahan and Lynch and Adam Peters and what we do as far as developing people in certain positions and creating 5th-round picks into all pros like they just did with Tano Hufanga in 2 years, they'll probably fail as well. So they're playing to their strengths. We're playing to our strengths. I just think that people don't see that. And so they're like, no, we got to be like the Eagles and do what Howie Roseman's able to do. He fired a Super Bowl winning coach and was able to get Sirianni, and then they went to the Super Bowl. That's not how long did it take Jed York to get a caliber of Kyle Shanahan? He fired a guy like Harbaugh, and then it took multiple coaches before you got to Shanahan. Harry Roseman got it on the first. He went from Andy Reid to Doug Peterson to Nick. Who's better at picking? Who's better at finding coaches?
Right.
Howie Roseman. So I'm like, that's what I think. We're just kind of picking and choosing like a buffet of what we want to see from other teams without having the same skill sets. So to go back to your question, should they be conservative? I think they're maximizing what they can with their skill set. I think they do a really good job of roster building. Our only issue, Jesse, is that the quarterback position hasn't been solidified. Fair criticism on Shanahan. He's not good at necessarily picking the right quarterback. He is good, though, at maximizing the quarterback's ability to play. I think we're going to see it when Jimmy Garoppolo go leave and play with another team. There's not one quarterback that has played better that Shanahan has had that's played better outside of being under Shanahan than when they did with Shanahan. And that's going back Matt Ryan, RG3, Jimmy, Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard, and I think it's going to be with all these quarterbacks as well. So to me, no, I think they build the roster really, really well. The conservative place where I think Shanahan needs to change is his decision-making in games. I think he needs to go for it more on fourth. I think he needs to stop playing conservative with that. But roster building, I think they do a great job at roster building.
Yeah, I agree. They do a great job at roster building. It's interesting though. I actually was recently listening to an interview with Tony Dungy, and he was talking about the situation when he left Tampa. And the reason he left Tampa was because there was a philosophical difference between he and the owners. And the owners wanted to win now. And he was all about building a long-term contender, a team that could win, right? And that's the ultimate goal. But he wanted to sustain winning for a long period of time, much like it seems like Shanahan and Lynch have put into place. And so there was that difference there between ownership and what Dungy thought. And because of that philosophical difference, they wanted to either go get Gruden, and I forget who the other coach was. They ended up getting Gruden, and they won a Super Bowl right away. Now, they weren't able to sustain the long-term growth and development as we saw, but that philosophical difference was like, okay, Dungy did a great job of building and keeping us competitive and all these other things, but he wasn't the guy to get us over the hump. That's where Gruden came in. And so it just kind of made me think about this situation as like, okay, the 49ers haven't gotten over the hump yet. They certainly can. They have done a great job, I think, of building a team that can sustain long-term winning. But can they win a Super Bowl, and will they? And at what point does that become the deal breaker? I don't think they've necessarily been too conservative. I think they've gotten conservative at weird times. When you trade multiple first-round picks to go get a quarterback and then you don't play him right away, I think that's getting conservative, even though you just showed that you'll do whatever it takes to go win. Obviously, when you go trade everything else that you have to go get a running back to try to win that year, that's not being conservative. But then you get in weird game situations, and he is conservative on fourth downs or what have you. So I think there are some tendencies where he can possibly be too conservative, or the 49ers can be conservative. But then there's also plenty of things that you can point to and say, they try to go all in. They've definitely tried. So I don't think they're too conservative by any means. I think what they've done has worked thus far to get them where they're at. They just need that push to get over the top. And I agree with you. I think it's the quarterback position, and that's what they have to figure out, and they have to get right. So I'm right there on board with you.
I think there's news from Pelissero from what the chat's saying that Brock Purdy
breaking news: Brock Purdy will postpone the UCL surgery tomorrow due to inflammation. Ooh. Okay, let's talk about that in a second here. Hold on. 2.0 says, how do you explain not playing Trey in year 2? Well, they did play him. He broke his ankle. That's how I explained that. His leg snapped in half. I don't remember if you saw that or if maybe you missed that game. He says, plus they committed to him before knowing Jimmy would be back. They had to play him. They didn't move on from Jimmy, at least until they saw Purdy. Hold on a second. I think
this is what I'm talking about, that these fake narratives that just get created out of nowhere. That's not at all what happened.
They were willing to play Trey and let Jimmy leave. If they really wanted Jimmy, they could have just paid him and signed him long term, but they chose not to do that because they were willing to play Trey Lance in year 2.
They allowed, like, Jesse.
Also, hold on real quick. Let me just say this. Yeah. It's not like Purdy made them get rid of Jimmy because Purdy was showing out on the practice squad. It's because Jimmy got hurt again, and then Purdy came in and played well. And so now they're like, okay, we have 2 quarterbacks, to where even before, if Trey Lance was the guy, we still only had one, and he keeps getting injured. We need a backup. And so that's where Jimmy makes sense. So now they have their starter and their backup, at least for this year. And so now it does make it easier for Jimmy. I don't know what press conference you saw, but when I saw the press conference and he was asked about Jimmy Garoppolo, he didn't even like that guy didn't even get to finish his question. He's like, "Oh yeah, no shot. He won't be back here. Like that's not going to happen." So I don't know. Maybe I'm reading the situation differently 2.0, but that's not how I saw it play out.
And let's talk about year 2. They allowed Jimmy to have contract negotiations with other teams even before they traded. Like that's unprecedented, right? So they were willing to, hey, go find a team that wants to sign you, start discussing like contracts and stuff like that, and we'll trade you to the team that you want. The fact that nobody wanted Jimmy and Jimmy was willing to get paid less base than Trey was. Did we forget that part? That he did such a big pay cut that he was getting paid less than Trey Lance's rookie contract. I don't know what this is, what 2.0, man. You obviously paid for the super chat, but I don't know if I think
I'm sure he'll clarify what he meant. Here's what I will say with super chats is they're hard because you have limited characters and you're trying to say a lot. And so sometimes like what you're saying doesn't come across the way that you want it to. Yes, he has, but those injuries mostly have come when he's been running. All right. We're taking a left turn here. We're changing the remainder of the show. We're going to finish on this topic because this is breaking news. And this is huge, man. This is a big deal, in my opinion. You're a month or so out from the last time you played football, and you still have too much inflammation in your elbow to have surgery. That is not good by any means. I mean, we can slice this however we want, but to me that's not a good thing. So what are your thoughts on this? I mean, I don't think anybody thought, we all thought tomorrow we were going to have our answers. Now we don't. So what are your thoughts on this breaking news?
Well, one, I think it's great that you use the pun, slice this whatever way you want, because unfortunately we can't slice this the way that we want at this moment. I think, this is one of those where we don't know, right? We don't know how much this takes it off track. How long the inflammation will go down. Obviously, it's not a good sign. It's not ideal, but how long till he gets it? If it just pushes it back a week, is that big of a deal? Maybe not. But obviously, this isn't ideal. And look, we're all praying for Brock Purdy that the surgery is successful. It only takes 6 months to rehab, and he could be there for training camp and compete for a starting position with Trey. But that's not always the case, man. They have mentioned that it might not be that way, and so prepare for the worst and hope for the best type of situation. But I think from what the chat is saying, tomorrow we're gonna get more information as far as what's gonna happen with the surgery or when it's gonna be. But right now, I don't know. Obviously, it's not great news, but it might not be timeline altering news either.
Well, here's the actual tweet. So it says QB Brock Purdy today, because remember he was supposed to visit the surgeon today prior to having surgery, and they were going to do the game plan. So Brock Purdy today visited Dr. Keith Meister, who recommended postponing the surgery because of ongoing inflammation in Purdy's elbow, per sources. They'll reconvene in early March. All signs continue to point to a UCL repair, which is the brace. Saying he'll be ready for the 2023 season. Now, that's very ambiguous. 2023 season doesn't necessarily mean, and I think people are taking it as he'll be ready for the beginning of 2023. That's not necessarily what that tweet is saying. It's just saying he will be ready for the season. I take that as at some point he will be ready to play this season. But if it is 6 months, then now we're in March. 6 months now is beginning of September, assuming that the inflammation is, I don't know. This is a monkey wrench that we did not see coming. Let me put it that way. By any means.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have to just wait and see, but we don't know. Like, if they can't do it till March, obviously that pushes it back, and then this is Trey Lance's job. I don't think that just because he could come back, he has to get strong and all that kind of stuff. So, I guess this takes away the whole QB competition part of things, which is tough. But all I wish is that he gets back healthy and he could be back to as close to 100% as possible. And he's a young guy as well. Even if he doesn't play next season, that's not the end of the world necessarily for him in his career.
Yeah, at least all signs are still pointing to a repair versus a reconstruction. So we're still talking about that 6-month timeline, but now we're pushing that timeline back, which...
Because from, I think, the calculations, he was 6 months. If they did it tomorrow, he would be ready training camp or somewhat middle of the preseason type situation. Now he won't be ready till the start of the season.
September,
so more than likely, and we know how Kyle Shanahan, he goes with whoever he started. He's not gonna change. He's not gonna put in Purdy if Trey Lance has been the starter type of situation, unless Trey Lance gets injured. So I guess the good sign is that Purdy will be coming back sometime during the season, and he'll probably be a backup. And hopefully Trey Lance shows out, and we don't need to see Purdy playing next season in that backup role. So, I don't know. I guess there's not much we could say. We have to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, because they kept saying 6 months, but then they also kept saying he'd be ready at the beginning of training camp, which is 5 months. I know that Nick Mullins signed with the team after 5 months. Now, that was strategically after any mini camps that they had, because they wanted him to be ready during month 7, essentially, to compete and be there for training camp. So I don't know if he was like fully ready to go. I don't know. This definitely throws a monkey wrench into things, and not the one that we expected. We said, okay, well, if there's going to be something that happens with this surgery, it's going to be that it's longer than what was expected once they get in there. But now they're saying they can't even have the surgery because of swelling still. That's kind of crazy to me. I don't know.
Well, it's recommended, right? I think that the doctor said let's postpone because of that. Yeah. Not necessarily that they can't have the surgery. He's just recommending not to have it quite yet. So who knows? Maybe if Purdy decides, hey, I want to do it regardless. I remember, when Kobe Bryant snapped his Achilles, they had told him, hey, there's still stuff going on. There's still inflammation. We can't do the surgery right now. And he's like, nah, you're doing the surgery right now, or I'm going to find somebody else to do the surgery right now because I want to start rehab right away type of situation. So it's still in Brock Purdy's hands what he wants to do.
Yeah, I mean, if you chose this professional, this specific guy to do the surgery because he's the best guy, you might want to listen to what he's saying, but we'll see what they do. Random question: is Bosa a $30 million worth more? Okay, so do you pay $30 million plus for Bosa, or would you consider trading him for 2 firsts and having money to go get guys like Payne and Davenport?
That is interesting.
I personally would be open to trading him for 2 first-round picks and going and getting 2 other guys that I think are really, really good. I would be open to that. I think the fan base would riot. That's just my personal opinion.
And I don't know if what teams are giving up 2 first rounds for Bosa. I don't know, knowing that they have to pay him $30 million.
Detroit Lions, maybe.
I mean,
they're going to draft defense. Why not go get, you have him and across from Hutchinson. Now
maybe Houston.
Your offense at some point.
maybe Houston, maybe Miami, maybe the Jets, maybe the Titans. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I don't think it happens. I think they
I
stick
don't
with
think so
Bosa.
either. No. I don't think it's realistic, but I'm listening. Let me say that. I am listening if somebody's offering 2 firsts, especially in this year's draft. I'm definitely listening. Jagaleo says Purdy surgery will be postponed to March. Yeah, we were just talking about that. Sorry, I'm a little bit behind. So hate that I made you pay for something that we were going to get to. Thank you, chat, for holding it down and keeping your ear to the streets while we are on live to make sure that we don't miss anything. Man, I don't know. Like this just kind of derails my whole mental thought process and what's going on. Now I'm trying to like figure out what I think of all this news. What does it mean? How does it
Well,
change things
I
for the
think
offseason?
I think that backup, whoever they bring in backup, well, I think it does two things right away. 49ers need to draft another quarterback in this draft. And whoever that backup quarterback, the veteran that they're going to bring in, is more important than ever now, because now you're talking about for sure probably going into the beginning of the season, that's going to be your week 1 backup. So you need somebody that's going to be able to play in case, God forbid, another quarterback injury. So, now you need somebody that can pick up the system and play well in it. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they have to have somebody now, and which sucks because now you actually have to spend money potentially on a quarterback because the hope is he'll be back ready to go for week 1 as your backup. I mean, I don't think you can just start him right out the gate without much throwing and practicing. So I think that makes it tough. But can you trust him to be the backup and come in and play right away either? I don't know if you can. And that's assuming that he's ready to go right at that 6-month mark, which will
that's what
put
I'm
him right
saying.
at the beginning of the regular season. That's tough, man. That's a really tough thing to believe in because they thought he'd be back ready for training camp. Well, now here we are a month later and you still have too much inflammation to get surgery done. This is not going the way that they thought it was going to go. Not yet, anyways.
Yeah, and luckily, they still have Trey Lance, right? And that's kind of what we looked at as the benefit of this. I think they still have a starting capable quarterback there that, and silver lining is Trey Lance is going to get all the opportunities in the world to show what he's capable of, win this team over. But I do think, that veteran that they bring in is even more important now, right? It can't be Nate Sudfeld. It has to be a guy that can play in case they need him, whether it be, a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, Jacoby Brissett. Has to be
Taylor
a guy,
Heineke.
Taylor Heineke, Cooper Rush. Who knows? It's got to be somebody. I think even Sam Darnold could be a name. Somebody that could come in and can be capable of holding down the fort and keep the momentum going in case one of our starters goes down.
2.0 says no one wanted Jimmy coming off an injury at that price. If he said he would do that before free agency, they would have never tried to move him. Said Jessie said they moved on from Jimmy when? I mean, when they tried to trade him. I mean, when they traded all the draft picks to go get Trey Lance. I mean, I think it was pretty clear they were ready to move on from Jimmy, and they have a chance to bring him back now. Let's see. I mean, it sounds like Purdy's not going to be ready to start the season. So if Trey Lance is as bad as you think he is, then they better go re-sign Jimmy to be the starter. Maybe they will. And then I'll say I was wrong, but I don't foresee that happening. And again, Judd, this is where there's confusion. I don't know if he was ready in 5 months. He signed at the 5-month mark, but they strategically did that right after OTAs, meaning he didn't have to throw in any sort of competition-led moment. He really actually didn't enter any competition until month 7. That's when he was in training camp and throwing. And going back and reading those reports, they said it took him another 2 or 3 months after that to fully regain his arm strength. So 5 months is when he signed, but that's not when he was ready, from what I understand, everything I've read. So, I mean, I think that's pretty ambitious, which is also what I said. initially when we were supposed to have this surgery tomorrow. I thought it was ambitious to say that he would be ready to go and competing full out for a job by the end of July. I thought it was ambitious then, and I definitely think it's ambitious now. That's just me. So, well, this thing took a turn that we did not expect. We're going to have to wait and see what goes on with Brock Purdy and the arm swelling, and we'll figure it out from there. I mean, we got some topics that we can talk about next week potentially, but we had to talk about it. It is breaking news. Suneil, as always, thank you for joining me, my guy. Everybody in the chat, appreciate y'all for tapping in. Now I got to go actually do my personal job and take care of some things. So, peace.